Hello there, Thando Book Club lovers. We are so happy to have you join us as we talk to African female authors about their books and the stories behind them. As is our custom, we always begin every episode with a quote from a famous African that we believe captures the spirit and message of the author we'll be interviewing. Today's quote is, "Whatever music you beat on your drum, there is somebody who can dance to it." That's from Chinua Achebe, from The Arrow of God. This quote sums up what our guest today champions in her work and in her book, Bongile Journey to Redemption. Meet Chiedza Makwara. She is the best-selling author of Bongile Journey to Redemption, a leading voice in gender equality in the arts industry, as well as in business. Chiedza is a woman of many talents, entrepreneur, businesswoman, broadcaster, author, scriptwriter, and producer. Chiedza has been sharing stories since her childhood. Her book, Bongile Journey to Redemption, was a bestseller in 2017, and it continues to do well in Zimbabwe and beyond borders. The book was adapted into a musical theatre production, which she scripted and executively produced and sold out 5 nights in November 2019, and also won 2 Namas in February 2020, hence making it one of the greatest theatrical productions to ever come out of Zimbabwe. Chiedza, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, Selina.
I'm so glad to have you back on the book club. And I'm not sure that we're going to even have enough time to do justice to the amount of talking that we can do when we get together.
I know this very well.
So, why did you start writing?
Well, I started writing at a really young age. I think the talent just came, it was obvious. I'd write books about, I remember I wrote a book about a chicken, a chicken in our yard, and I had my whole family just cracking up and laughing, and I grew that talent. So the more people who would be reading and telling me it's good encouraged me to write some more. So I wrote in primary school, I wrote in high school. In high school, actually, people used to just read my books. They were reading my own books as novels, and they couldn't wait to hear, what's going to happen next. And I'd write about them too. So that was quite fun to do.
I love that. You grew your talent, and you grew your talent throughout your formative years, all throughout life. And I think what the amazing things about that is that it develops a practice, a consistent practice of writing. So your book, Bongile Journey to Redemption, I know it took you 7 years to complete, or to just get out into the public space. Tell us why that was.
I'm glad it did. I'll start with that because I feel like if it was released earlier, I wouldn't have had the capacity to handle its success and the type of story it was. I wrote it when I was 23, I think, and it was such an emotional book, and there was so much to unpack there. I'd spend hours crying because this woman's life was devastating me. So I guess I felt like the world wasn't ready for it. I also felt like I believed in myself, but I also felt like I didn't have the resources, the capacity to publish this book. So I sat on it for 7 years, and just, close friends would read it and I'll talk about it. But it was kind of that hidden, secretive book. I actually didn't talk about my writing until much later on.
That's really incredible. And I love the self-awareness and the honesty in terms about where you were at when you first wrote it and where you needed to be when you released it. And I think a lot of people sometimes have a misunderstanding or a misconception that you write something, you have to immediately publish it. It has to be out there. And sometimes you just need to take some time to let something sit and for you to grow around a particular topic or theme or story.
Absolutely true with that. And I want to add as well, I tried to get it published once or twice and I was rejected. That also broke my spirit. I was told it wasn't good enough. Can you imagine? So that also maybe caused a little bit of a halt in it until later on somebody, came up to me and said, this book is brilliant. That's when I decided to actually push it forward and to do something about it, because the people around us sometimes just break our spirit, or tell us it can't be done or you can't publish. They were looking for certain books with certain topics, and mine wasn't it at the time. So I'm glad that I went through with it years later.
I do, and you're a writer that, for me particularly, also epitomizes that Toni Morrison quote about, if you're looking for a particular book and it hasn't been written, then you should write it. And I feel like every time you tell the story of Bongile and some of the things that happened in that 7-year journey, that's actually, you know, what was happening, the story inside the story.
True. It's so interesting how my life is also intertwined in that book. I share experiences with her, and I love to say that a lot of people who then read the book later, who I didn't expect to have the same experience, had the same experiences as Bongile. I mean, Bongile is a rural woman. You'd think that you and I would not identify with her, yet our experiences are similar in some aspects. So yeah, I love that. And as you said, with me as well, you know, there's some things I definitely identify with. Some of her experiences to do with childbirth and, you know, some of her struggles. I went through that. So I'm glad that people are finding, you know, similar, you know, experiences and lessons from that book. Or maybe not even lessons, perspective, because she's not exactly the most great decision maker, is she? No, she isn't. Definitely she isn't. And that's one of the things that's always fascinated me about Bongile as a protagonist. But one of the things that, to go back to, I think, your writing journey and getting this book out, what has also impressed me is the ability to sweat the equity around, you know, the book as a commodity. So, you know, finding it a different expression on stage, for instance, and all of these responses that you parlay into in terms of people resonating with it, is very telling about when you make a book descriptive instead of prescriptive. So what are some of the pleasant surprises you've had in terms of people's response to the book and to the theatre production? Okay, the first surprise was for me, because I've been told so many no's, but I'm the kind of person who just likes to break norms, right? So I was told it cannot be a theatre production based on how it's written. And I was like, no way, I really want this on stage because I feel like this is such a deep story to tell. And I was told it cannot be a musical. But for me, music is what the universal language, right? Yeah. So I wanted it to be a musical. So that was a surprise that actually worked out. Another surprise is people actually came out to see this. And I had anticipated, 20, 30 people are going to come each night. But we filled out to the point where, you know, people were sitting on the floors just trying to get this show. So that was a really, really major surprise. And to get the recognition from the National Arts Merits Award, that was a big, big surprise. A big surprise, yeah. But Chiedza, let me stop you there. We're going to take a short break. Okay. And we're going to unpack more of that when we get into some of the themes about Bongile. We'll be taking a short break, and we'll be back in a few minutes to discuss the book, Bongile, A Journey to Redemption. We're back in the studio with Chiedza Makwara, and we're discussing the book, Bongile, A Journey to Redemption. And this is the part of the segment where we really unpack the themes and the character's journey throughout the book. So Chiedza, Bongile, as you mentioned earlier, isn't the greatest decision maker. And I would say that she's not a sympathetic protagonist or character. Why was it important for you to tell this story from that narrative point of view? I think it was important for me to show her true self so that our readers and everybody else would identify with this character. I mean, we're not all good, right? There's also certain aspects of us that are not exactly the most pleasant or the most admirable. So it made more sense to just, you know, show out who she is. And she's the protagonist, but she's also the antagonist. She's antagonizing herself and everybody else with these poor decisions that she's making. She's her own villain, you know, but she's also her own hero. So it was very important for me to let that out. Definitely. And I think for us as readers to have a chance to confront that within ourselves as we journeyed on that journey with her. One of the things that I found universal and relatable within that dynamic
because obviously when you read a book, I think sometimes you want the character to be this good person whose decisions you completely agree with. But there is something provoking about a character whose decisions you don't agree with, because you try harder to understand them. And in that, you begin to be more open to the universal, relatable, honest moments. And there are very many honest moments in Bongile's story, particularly her relationship with her love interest, her longtime love interest, and her inability sometimes to do the right thing for herself, to learn to love the right thing, as opposed to just, loving the fantasy of a person. And it's very interesting to me how Bongile is aware of her issues, but is unable to connect the dots in terms of how to remedy them. What's your take on that?
Okay, first I'm going to talk about the point of perspective, what you were speaking about. What I love about the reaction to Bongile is all about perspective, right? I definitely didn't agree with her decisions, and a lot of people didn't, because they're like, what is this lady thinking when she's making all these decisions? Some were sympathetic, some were empathetic, some were just not having it. So I love you bringing up and shining a light on, reading somebody's book that has a different perspective and a different take on life, and that's what I love about it. Then when it comes to, the relationship angle and the decisions that come with that, it was very important for me to really highlight that a lot of the decisions that are made when it comes to romance aren't exactly the greatest, maybe because, that's the part where you're most vulnerable. And I wanted to show that vulnerability in the book. I wanted all of us to connect, people who've been lovers, people who know how it feels like, and to not just make it an airy-fairy sort of book, and not to rush through that point, because that's a really big turning point in the book, and I really, really wanted that to come out.
Yeah, totally true. And I love what you say about how when we're vulnerable, like our decision-making capabilities, are impaired. High emotions, low quality decision-making. And we definitely see that many different times with Bongile, but we also see the consequences of that. And I love that about this book, is that you were kind to us as readers, and you were like, I know you're not going to agree with this, but I'm also going to show you in Technicolor the consequences of these decisions. And I think those are the things we need to wrestle with, right, in a redemptive story, because I think at the center of it all is the ability and power to forgive ourselves more than to forgive other people. The book begins with Bongile on a physical journey, and then she's also on a journey in her mind through the past. Why was it important for you to tell a life story from that perspective?
A very good question, because life is a journey, as they say, and a lot of people kind of think that the journey is your age and maybe your experiences, your physical experiences. But for me, a lot of things, start in the mind. Life is a journey, and it can be a journey in your mind in terms of how you see things, how you view things, and the kind of decisions you made. So it was very important for me to show that, as much as she was on a physical journey going to, her rural area where she grew up, but she was also on a journey of redeeming herself, but in her mind, because it starts with the mind. So, and for me, I feel like if your mind is not right, you can't move forward, you can't go anywhere. And I also feel like to go forward, you need to go back. You kind of need to go and unpack the things that happened in the past honestly, and just be honest with yourself, unpack, let it go, even if it's ugly. And I wanted to show that ugliness. She's literally talking to herself in the bus. She's literally thinking, and shaking her head. And if you look at her while she's sitting in the bus, you probably think, oh, this woman is crazy, because she's struggling and fighting her thoughts and her emotions through this physical journey, but in her mind journey.
So Chiedza, one of the things that you mentioned earlier was sort of like the surprised responses, people thinking, how can this be a musical production? And I think it parlays earlier into what you just said just now about the journey into the internal aspects. And so I don't think we think about internal conversations as things that are dramatic, that can be put on stage, and then be put on stage musically. Why was that important for you?
It was important for me to reach the next level of the book, and as much as books are great, but there's a market for books. There are people who love to read. You and I love to read books, but there are other people who are more visual and who still needed to hear the story. So I made sure that this happened. And music has a way of communicating to people. It has a way of, connecting. We all love music. It doesn't matter who you are. So having some of those emotional scenes in the book sang out, meant a lot to a lot of people. And what a lot of people remember the songs, really. And it was so great to work with so many people in the industry and to have so many people connect, even the actors and the singers connected to that book. So that was very important, and I'm glad it did well.
Yeah, I'm glad you found all those different expressions for the book, so that it could reach more people, because we do need to tell our stories more honestly, as you did in this book.
Thank you for that.
Powerful insights there for us all to ponder. It's time for us to take a short break, but stay tuned. We'll be right back with Chiedza talking about publishing and the ins and outs of that. You don't want to miss this. You're watching the Thando Book Club, and we're interviewing Chiedza Makwara. And now we're going to get into a discussion around publishing and the advice that she would give to anybody who's contemplating writing a book, and contemplating maybe following some of the milestones that she had on her journey, including production. So from what you learned about the publishing process, what advice would you give to budding writers?
If you can't find a publisher, and there's many now available, the industry is actually growing. It's okay to self-publish. I self-published because I was told no so many times, and I knew the book was good. I'd been told by my peers, my friends, that this book is good. So I self-published with the help of, a very renowned author. Can I mention her name? Cynthia Hakutangwi, Cynthia Chirinda, and she helped me through that process. I also got my book on Amazon, which is very, very good for exposure. And these are some of the things you can actually just do it for a very little cost. It doesn't cost so much. And Amazon then prints it if, it needs to be shipped somewhere, within the countries where it ships from. So you don't have to, think about, the big costs of printing as well. It can be a digital book. Now you can even do an audiobook. So that's the advice I'd give, anybody who wants to publish, who doesn't have a publishing house. You can do this yourself. You start somewhere, right? And the more successful the book becomes, you'd have those publishers knocking on your door. So you better just start.
Well, definitely. I think one of the things that encourages me about your story is that your book became a bestseller on Amazon.
Yes.
And I think that what a lot of people don't realize is that it's not an overnight success. So just like the book took 7 years to be published, after you publish, a whole new world of work begins. And it's constant work, and you're constantly doing things.
Thank you.
And you're constantly finding ways to get the book in front of more readers. Can you just tell us a little bit slightly about what that publicity or self-promotion road looks like? Because for a lot of writers who tend to be introverts, that's a little bit scary.
That's very scary. It was very, very scary for me too. Even being a business person, it was very, very scary. But I created a team around me, with somebody who was in charge of just posting on the social media platforms, somebody who was in charge of just dealing with how the Amazon is how it works, because I didn't know how that worked. I had to actually get somebody on to help me, and just promoting the book as many functions as you can, attending the book, giving away some books, approaching the ministry and asking them how to make your book a set book. And that's still a goal for me, because I'd really want my book to be a set book as well. And I actually approached them, and they told me how you go about it. So you really, really need to invest your time and your energy into doing it. It's doable. You can market the book by yourself, but it's an investment. You can't just think, oh, I wrote the book, people are going to buy it. How are they going to buy it if they don't know that it's there, and if they don't know what it's about? And also with the theater production, that actually spiked the sales of my book, because as much as I call myself an Amazon bestseller, or I'm called an Amazon bestseller, it actually really did well in the country, especially after the theater production, because people were more interested to know, what is this book about? Because the show was so dramatic and it was so great. So self-promotion, get your peers, your friends, and do as many interviews and
as
like
possible.
this.
Yes, like this. And
as
some,
possible.
Some great self-publishing savvy there.
Yeah.
We are coming to the end of our interview, and we always like to leave a little bit of time for a reading from the author. So what are you going to read from us today?
Well, I'm going to read the beginning of the book because I think that'll just, spike the interest of what it's about for people who haven't read it. And that's my favorite part, because that's when it all begins, right? That conversation she's having in her head, or she's talking to us, but she's talking to herself. So I'm going to read that.
Great. So take it away, Chiedza.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Selena. This is page 8, second paragraph. I've been sitting in this bus for the past 4 hours with my newly born son, or is it more correct to say, my newly dead son? He's both newborn and dead. Yes, the baby I'm holding, my baby, is just an empty shell. I might as well be holding a plastic lifeless doll. I don't know how long he has been dead for. I didn't even feel him slipping away from me. Or maybe I did, and I was too caught up in my own thoughts to care. I am sitting on this bus with close to 60 people, and none of them have realized I'm holding a corpse. Should I scream? Is it a bit too late for that? Is it a bit too late for shock and horror? Should I wail? Is it ever too late to mourn the death of something you love, or at least something you wanted to love? Should I stop the bus and tell someone? What should I do? Nothing. Yes, maybe I'll do nothing. I'll do nothing but wait. I am waiting for forgiveness.
So that's really powerful, especially how you end that reading with waiting for forgiveness. What do you have to say about that?
Well, the book is about a journey to redemption. So that paragraph is, kind of the start of what she's saying to us, that I'm waiting for forgiveness. I want to be redeemed. And throughout the whole book, that's the theme. Am I going to be redeemed? She's feeling like the redemption should come from other people or outside sources, but really it should come from herself. Mm-hmm. I think the most important forgiveness that for anybody is the forgiveness for yourself, through yourself. So this is what I wanted to show in that paragraph.
And it's shown really, really well, because I think it's very powerful when you say she's waiting. And what is she waiting for? And initially she's like nothing. And then the penny drops and she's like, it's forgiveness. Mm-hmm. And I, for one, am somebody who loves books that are redemptive in, the end, or redemptive in the journey. I don't like those stories where we don't have any redemption at all, or we don't at least come to an understanding and acceptance of someone. And so I think true to the core of the book, forgiveness is a part of that, but forgiveness from ourselves also, I think, actually, strangely, in a way, helps us to receive forgiveness from other people, because other people can forgive you, but if you don't own it for yourself, you'll never be free. So I think that that's powerful, and I think you picked the right passage to end this interview on.
Thank you so much. The question is, did she forgive herself? Shall we wait for the next book?
Yes, let's wait for the next book. And, I think that we are interested to know when the next book will come.
Yeah, I've been trying to work on the next book for this one in particular, but because the story did so well, I don't know if I can ever reach the same level I did. I hope I did. So I decided to just pen something else for now that's completely different while I figure out, how I want to go forward with this story. I had a lot of phone calls, a lot of people coming to me. How can you end the book like this? Why did you end the book like this? This should have happened. But I guess it's great that it's a bit open-ended, because you kind of come up with your own ending.
Yeah.
And that's what redemption is about, right? Come up with your own ending.
Exactly. Well, thank you, Chiedza. It's been another great edition of the Book Club with our guest, Chiedza Makwara, author of Bongile, A Journey to Redemption. See you again next week, same time, with another fabulous African female author. Until then, stay safe, stay strong, and stay true. Goodbye.